Good morning, everyone. I'm Davis Overton. I'm the Senior Vice President of White Realty and Service Corporation. I'm also the Vice Chair of the Business Climate for the Knoxville Chamber. Thanks for joining us this morning, and welcome to the first Capital Connections of the legislative session. Honored to have with us today Senator Becky Massey and Senator Richard Briggs to share their insight into what's happening at the Tennessee General Assembly. Throughout their discussion, please feel free to enter any questions that you have in the Q&A panel. We'll try to answer them as time allows at the end. But before they get started, I'd like to take an opportunity to introduce Rodney Ruth. Rodney is the Director of Operations for Integrity Laboratories, which sponsors Knoxville Chamber's business climate ecosystem. Appreciate their support and investment in the Chamber's mission to drive regional economic prosperity. Rodney, floor is yours.
Thank you, Davis. Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be a part of the virtual Capital Connections call today with Senator Becky Duncan Massey and Senator Richard Briggs. Integrity Laboratories wanted to partner with the Knoxville Chamber as a business climate ecosystem sponsor so our community could see that Knoxville is not only a place to start a business, but to thrive and succeed as well. We have been privileged to serve our community since 2014, and we partnered with the Chamber in 2021. I say thank you to the Knoxville Chamber for investing in the continued success of our great city. As a local laboratory, it is vital that we, Integrity Laboratories, partner with other Knoxville-based businesses for our community's ongoing success. Thank you all for your time. Back to you, Davis.
Thank you, Rodney. Now I'm going to turn it over to Amy Nolan. She's the Vice President of Regional Enhancement for the Knoxville Chamber, and she will moderate today's discussion. Amy?
All right. Thank you, Davis, and thank you, Rodney. Our guests, of course, are no strangers to probably any of you, but I want to remind you that we are very fortunate that they hold leadership positions in Nashville. Senator Massey is chairwoman of the Senate's Transportation and Safety Committee and serves on the Health and Welfare Committee. Senator Briggs is chairman of the Senate State and Local Committee, vice chair of the Rules Committee, and serves along with Senator Massey on the Transportation and Safety Committee. So, Senator Massey, it's budget time in Nashville, and quite a lot of money to spend, especially new federal dollars that are targeted toward infrastructure. Can we expect to see some local highway projects sped up and perhaps some new ones on the drawing board?
Well, Amy, thank you. It's always fun to be with our friends at the Chamber. I wish we were in person, but maybe a few extra people could join because we're not. So the infrastructure money is the pluses of the infrastructure, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, is that it is a 5-year package, whereas the transportation funding we have been getting was just redone 1 year at a time. So there's some more certainty to it. There is some additional money in there, but it's not the pot of gold that I think it was played out to be when it was passed and the spin that came out of Washington. In basic road and bridge money, which is kind of our bread and butter in transportation, it's about, over a 5-year period, it's about $1 billion extra. So when you divide that by all the TDOT districts and by 5 years, it figures out to about, I think, a little under 50 million per district per year. So that's not a significant amount considering the needs of our road systems in the state, but we'll take it, we'll use it. The better thing is in the budget this year, the governor actually, for the first time ever, budgeted over $500 million for new road projects out of the general fund. And this doesn't affect our Improve Act projects that are in the works, but this is new and they were all economic related. There was 21 projects identified in, in 21 counties. And Knox County was fortunate enough to get 2. And one is out at Watt Road and one is at Campbell Station redoing the interchanges because of some economic efforts and things. So we're excited about that, and we'll continue to work on getting our roads funded. It's interesting, the gas fund, the money from our gas tax is been increasing. So in fiscal year 20, it was at 505 million, and they're proposing it'll hit 539 million this year. So it is continued to grow, which is helpful, but that also means there's more people on our roads, which we've all seen in Knox County.
Yeah. Well, I know those projects on Campbell Station and Watt Road are very important. I know we've talked a lot among our infrastructure council that is one of the busiest in all of the states. So thank you for your efforts on that.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Briggs, infrastructure, of course, is a pillar of our business climate, but so is workforce. And you've really already passed a bill that we, excuse me just a second. You've already passed legislation, I found it, this year to really move us forward on workforce. And I'm going to name 3 work-based grants to be used in a middle college, create a grant program for students who are training for industry-recognized certifications, and lastly, in-state tuition for military veterans. Talk to us about the impact that you hope these will have on the labor and talent struggles that our employers are really facing right now.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. That's really a really good question. And I think it's something that all of our members of the Chamber of Commerce and all of our business community and government and nearly everyone in the state is facing, is the lack of a workforce, and in particular in some of these skilled fields on the workforce. One of the bills that you talked about, they call it middle school, but what it is, these are kids that are, we already have that for the high school kids where they can be dual enrolled in one of our community colleges or one of our universities. So while they're in high school, they can actually take community college courses or university courses and then get credit when they start college. What this program is for our Tennessee College of Applied Technology students. These are some of the trades where they, while they're in high school, they can enroll in one of the TCATs in a similar manner to the community colleges. The problem we ran into is that some of those do require apprenticeships. And because these students are under the age of 18, some of the companies were reluctant to take them in, because if they were injured or if something happened, they would be responsible. And the smaller companies just couldn't afford to cover that like some of the larger companies. And what the bill did, it set up a mechanism so these students would be covered if they went to do their apprenticeships or some of the on-the-job training that's required for our technical skills for the labor force. Another bill that we had that we're hoping to draw talent into Tennessee is that our military students who are our military personnel who are officially residents and legally residents of another state, but they may be living in Tennessee, can enroll in Tennessee colleges with in-state tuition. We think that's going to be a great value for what we put into it, because we know that about 70 to 80% of the students who complete college in the state of Tennessee will stay in the state of Tennessee. And particularly with the discipline that your military students have, you got to get up, be ready to go to work in the morning. You got to show up for work. You know how to follow instructions. We feel that this will be pretty much a double win for the state. And then the third bill that I think will really have a major impact is with the Tennessee Promise, Tennessee Reconnect, and some of those scholarships that we give students. The students who are in certificate programs were not eligible for those funds. And just to give you an example, is that some of the community colleges offer programs. They're 12 weeks long for people to become linemen. These are the people that KUB or some of the other utilities would hire that actually have to go up the poles when we have a storm that reestablish our electricity. It's about a $4,000 tuition for those 12 weeks. And many of the students just couldn't afford that. However, when they complete that program, it's a certificate program, not a college credited program. They can go to work for companies like KUB or the other utilities. They usually start off at about $35 an hour. Plus, they have overtime, and also they may be sent out of state if there's weather emergencies in other states. Many of those are making over $100,000 a year. And if we can take these students that are coming out of high school or people that aren't college graduates or community college graduates and help them obtain those certificates, and there's other programs like that also, is that we'll not only have a better workforce, but we're offering students that have less than a college education the opportunity to have a really good job and a very good middle-class lifestyle.
Yeah, amen. And we really look forward to working with our partners and putting that legislation to good use. And I really apply it on the ground. Again, veterans, with our recruitment efforts to bring talent in, veterans are just a fantastic pool of workers and people that we would welcome to our community. So that's fantastic. Before I leave you, we've talked in this setting several over the years about your efforts to allow local government to keep more of the sales tax that is remitted to the state for administration. That fee is kind of dates back to the paper and pen days. And now we know you just have to flip a switch. So tell me kind of where that is this year and what it can mean to our local government.
Yes, I actually have 3 bills, and I'm working with the Tennessee Municipal League and the county association on these. We've got 3. One is what you just mentioned. Presently, the state, for all the sales taxes that are collected, the money goes to the state. They take out, I call it a processing fee, 1.125%, and then the money comes back to the local governments. I have a proposal out there where we would cut that fee from 1.125% down to 0.5% or 0.5%. And just as you mentioned, Amy, back in the 80s, this all had to be done by paper, pencil, writing out checks and then sending them back. Now, it may not be the flip of a switch, but it certainly is the click on a button that makes that happen. And there's very little expense to the state with this. But we also have 2 other bills that I think we have a much better chance of getting passed. One, if you go back to the early 2000s when the state of Tennessee was having budget difficulties, there was a 2% tax that the state kept completely. Previously, that money was being returned to the local governments, and then it was being kept by the states. We think we have a very good chance of getting that passed. And then there's another that had to do with the taxes. Presently, the state is keeping the funds anything over $1,600 that come in on that, and we're going to double that up to $3,200. Each of those 3 bills would bring between $60 and $70 million back to the local governments. And the latter 2 that I mentioned, I think, are the 2 that we have the most prospects for getting passed. So we're really hoping that this will help out the local governments. We'll be able to keep property and business taxes down and allow the local governments to use the funds in the way that they feel best.
That's wonderful. While you were speaking, we had another guest join us, Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally. Welcome. We're glad you're on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Wonderful. Let's bring Senator. Do you have something to say, Massey?
No, we're good.
Okay. Let's bring. That was good timing. Let's bring him right in. The Lieutenant Governor, again, not a stranger to most of you all. He serves as Speaker of the Senate and is the longest serving current legislator that we have. So thank you. We are blessed in Knox County, again, to have another leader with us. So I think a lot, Senator McNally served as, for many, many years, chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. I think he's earned a lot of respect for his conservative take on the budget. The governor this year has proposed a $52.5 billion with a B budget, record amount of spending for our state. Lieutenant Governor, kind of what's your pulse on the budget? Do you feel like you and your colleagues are pretty comfortable with the amount of money and also the priorities?
Well, a great deal of that money is federal funds, which we have little or no control over how we spend it. Some of it in the CARES Act and the Recovery Act. But what we have seen is, as we've lowered taxes, we've seen record growth in revenue. And we have to be careful because in the economic cycle is a series of ups and downs. Right now we're in an up, so it's best to put money away for periods when we're down. So we'll increase the rainy day fund further from $1.5 billion. We'll also do a lot of construction with one-time money and pay for it up front rather than try to bond it. And I think that we'll also, I think, be looking at some tax relief, possibly in the area of reducing for 1 year the registration fee on license plates, and also reducing or eliminating the professional privilege tax, which is sort of a type of income tax that's aimed at certain professions.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Senator Briggs, I believe you have a bill that would eliminate the professional privilege tax. And I believe doctors, investment brokers still pay that tax. You're on mute, sir.
Lawyers too.
Lawyers too, Senator. You're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, it's those four professions. Previously, I don't remember if it was 17 or 19 professions that had to pay that tax. It's pretty steep. It's $400 a year. And even particularly for some of the lower income professions, a 2-year license might be $200. And then over that 2 years, you would be paying an additional $800, $400 a year. So it was $1,000 every 2 years to renew the license. A couple of years ago, we took some of those off, but we left, I believe it was lobbyists, financial advisors, lawyers, and physicians on there. And I did file a bill for that. And I think the governor liked it so much, he incorporated that into the administration's bills. So that really puts a lot more, a lot more power behind it than just one of us trying to carry it. So we're really hopeful that we'll be able to eliminate that tax this year.
Yeah, that's great. Because, you think that they're high paying, but that's usually after 10 years or so. And a lot of students graduate with debt right when they go to work. So that's great. I think that's
well, I might add, previously what we also had, we would have certain psychologists, clinical psychologists, and they may go to work for the school system. And they make a livable salary, but it's not some of the high salaries that we think about are, these high-powered attorneys making. And it could have even discouraged some of those professions from going into public service, where they could serve our schools and other areas of government.
Yeah, great. A big part of the budget, of course, is education spending. K through 12 spending takes a big chunk. And the governor has also introduced a new formula for that spending. Lieutenant Governor, you had a hand in crafting the BEP that Governor Lee wants to replace with TISA, Tennessee Investment in Student Achievement. More money for everybody, a different formula. It appears less complicated, but what are some issues that might have to be kind of massaged as it works its way through the legislature? And what are you hearing locally from folks?
Well, locally, there's a lot of support for it. It's a student-focused formula. So every student receives a base amount, and then added to it would be percentages for different things, like if the student is a gifted student, or if the student is a real slow student. Also, if the school system is in a very rural area where there's a sparse population of students, and that gets into a transportation issue. Also, it's like a pyramid, and on top of that, of course, is the teacher salary and also achievement. And I think it's good that we'll be paying schools that are doing better, giving them more money and rewarding them for their efforts. And hopefully it'll bring the schools at the bottom up.
Okay. Senator Massey, I see you nodding your head. Do
Well,
you concur?
Yeah, I think it's a really good. They've worked really hard with lots of input. Actually, some of this input started back when Governor Haslam was in office, so it's not just been a short-term project. It just, they kind of a race at the finish to get things done. But Knox County alone will get $54 million a year, and which is significant. And this is on top of the base that they're increasing teacher salaries this year in this year's budget by $125 million. So there's going to be extra money there, and that will kind of service the base. But there are 39 other states that do a student-based funding model. So it's obviously working other places. And BP served us well, but it got outdated, and we needed to revise it. One thing that I've told some folks is that it's not going to be perfect. I mean, there's some things I think as we go through it that we'll see that we may need to massage a little bit, but I think it's a good plan. I think it's worth us moving forward with and getting this extra funding and to the students and to the schools and to our communities.
Senator Briggs, you're nodding as well. Anything you'd like to add?
No, this was just presented to us and the public for the first time a week ago yesterday.
Mhm.
And I mean, on the surface, it looks like it's a very good idea. We're going to be getting what you want to do. You try to get your funds where they're needed the most. And just as Governor McNally mentioned just a few seconds ago, some of the rural communities have challenges that the urban communities don't. Students that are falling behind or are behind in reading or in mathematics or some of these other studies, we're able to devote more resources to them than some of the students that seem to be doing well. So I think what it's trying to do is to focus the money and devote the money to where we need it the most. I'm receiving a lot of questions, through the emails and telephone calls about some of the specifics. And we've not heard all of those yet. And I try to remind people that we didn't get a booklet or a document as thick as our budget is on this. We had a 4 or 5 page summary on it. And as the education committees meet in the House and the Senate, I think they'll be able to delve into this a lot more, and we'll find out more of the details of it. But at least at looking at it, I'm very encouraged that this will get a lot more money where we need it to try to improve our academic and educational preparedness for our students to leave K through 12 and go on and get a certificate or get more training or education.
Yeah. So while I've got maybe 1 or 2 questions left, I just want to remind everyone, if you have a question for our guests, please type it in the Q&A panel and we'll get to you. So Senator Massey,
Yes.
there's been a little kerfluffle locally about a bill you have regarding billboards, an outdoor advertising vehicle for many businesses and nonprofits. You're doing some amendments, some tinkering with that. Will you explain what that bill does and what you're aiming to do?
Okay. Well, I mean, some of the businesses brought this to me, but 2 years ago, we had to rewrite our whole outdoor advertising device laws due to our state, plus a lot of other states around the country. Their billboard bills law was ruled unconstitutional. And that was really the heavy lift that affected everything statewide, and just really got to clarification, because some of the old law was subjective and it wasn't really clear in implementation or in monitoring it. So we did that a couple of years ago, and that affects the whole state. The industry brought a bill to me that just affected municipalities. And it was basically, it was in the law already, but it wasn't real clear that a company could update a current outdoor advertising device or a billboard. And so we've had some concerns. So we've been working with the industry to try to see if we could take care of some of those things. Basically, the way I believe it's going to be, one is, first, even though there's some folks that have said Knoxville wouldn't be exempt from this, there is there's an appeal case from 2016 that Judge Susano wrote, blasting, just very adamantly saying that Knoxville, because they're under home rule, is exempt from the billboard laws. So I always say you can ask 2 attorneys, you can get 4 opinions, but we have that case. Plus there was another thing recently in the Tennessee Journal. It was talking about the ESA case, but it said that home rule localities are exempt from other rules, but not education. So I feel sure that our municipality is exempt, but the key points of what they're moving toward is it would only be updating the devices that are on the interstate and I think some people have concern about the digital. We already have digital devices on our interstate. So it would only be those. It would only be in the municipalities, and it would not add one additional new billboard to anywhere in Tennessee. It's only existing billboards. So the concerns, we had were they didn't want it in their neighborhoods. Well, there's very few neighborhoods on the interstates in the cities, and they didn't want more billboards. So those really are the key things that I think that I'd like to say. Now, I mean, we're still working through the process, and we'll see where it goes. But we've tried to address the major concerns.
Okay, thank you. Senator Briggs, another hyper-local issue has been around 5Gs and small cell devices. And you and Representative Zachary have carried a bill that I think is very close to passing, that kind of changes the look and design. And this is technology that's coming to all of our neighborhoods. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's been very controversial, particularly here in Farragut where I live, because they started installing the 5G devices. These are little small devices. They call them microcells or cellular devices that are put on poles. If you drive through Turkey Creek, you probably won't notice them, although they're there. The problem came in some of our neighborhoods in Farragut, where they already had underground utilities, but these things, of course, have to be above ground, and they need to put them about every 8 houses. And they were coming in on the easements and putting poles up and putting 5Gs, which very, very understandable, and I get it completely. The residents did not like. The problem that we ran into in attempting to do anything about this is that federal law said that local and state governments cannot interfere with the placement of telecommunication utilities. So it meant that we couldn't stop it. However, there have been federal rulings that said that local regulations and ordinance that deals with the appearance, with the aesthetics of these, the local governments could control. And this is a bill that Representative Zachary and I have been meeting with citizens group. We were meeting with the local government in Farragut, the Board of Aldermen, and particularly in the mayor. And we finally came up in agreement with them and AT&T and Verizon to where Farragut could pass local ordinances that governed the appearance of these poles that they were putting up in people's yards and in other places where they would try it all literally make an effort to not have to put the poles up, use existing poles and those things. And I think it's the best deal that we could come up with. But I would want anyone that lives out in Farragut that's been opposed to these to know that we really are limited, and we're handcuffed by the federal law on limiting the placement of these. But we're doing what we can on how they appear and with the aesthetics of those. And this is this compromise that we have that we've reached right now. It went through committee very easily. We'll be presenting it shortly to in both the House and the Senate floors. I expect it'll pass without a lot of difficulty because there's been a lot of work put on it, and we do have agreement with all the parties.
Yeah, that's correct. You mentioned one of kind of the question led into what I was going to ask the Governor McNally is the issue that you kind of think it's going to pass. We haven't had Governor, you with us? There, can you hear me?
Not very well.
All right, can you hear me now? Kristen can work on the back end.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. He just mentioned passing without much disagreement. It seems like this is pretty smooth year. We've had COVID, thank goodness, is behind us. Not a lot of issues with the budget. School choice might be the one thing that trips us up. What are you hearing about some reaction to the charter provisions that the governor, you represent 3, 4, 5 school districts, including the top school district in the state? Are you getting a lot of feedback regarding things like school choice, the vouchers, premiums for charter schools?
I have not. As far as vouchers, I don't think there'll be anything happen with vouchers. As far as school choice, I think the existing law will still remain that the it would be up to the local school board to review, approve the charter school. The charter school, if they received an adverse ruling, could then appeal it, and that's still in existence today. So I think that will remain. I don't think it'll change at all.
Okay, good. And are you comfortable, along with the student-centered formula, a student could receive extra for attending a charter school to help them with facilities? Do you think the Senate will be comfortable with that?
I think so. I think that's because the the cost of construction of a new building and maintenance is really built into that, and I think the other things about the formula, for a period of 3 years, the local match should remain stable. Every year it increases because inflation, teacher salaries, and things like that. I think it should remain fairly stable, and the teacher salaries will go directly to classroom teachers, and it in the past it's been given to other personnel as long as they were in the instructional group. Also, the teacher salary increase will cover teachers as well as those that are not under the BEP. And I think that's real important because schools like Knoxville or Knox County, Anderson County, Clinton, City of Oak Ridge schools have a lot of teachers outside the BEP formula that are classroom teachers, and they would receive the increase as well. And it wouldn't be up to the locals to have to fund that.
That's right. That's right. I think that is definitely a benefit, and we'll see. And I do want to say Knox County, I believe, is 11% increase in the basic is what we've said so far. So, did you want Senator Massey or Briggs? Did you want to add anything to that? No. Okay. So Senator Briggs, when I read City Council agenda, I thought of you because they are taking a vote to ban smoking in parks and playgrounds. And that is because of legislation you worked on for many years longer than it should have taken to enable them to do that. And now you're trying to do the same thing with entertainment venues, I believe. Can you discuss what that bill and is that going to take you 6 years again? I hope not. But go ahead.
I hope it doesn't take another 6 years. What the bill that I have proposed right now, we still have a few bars in Tennessee. We call them the over 21 bars, where you're allowed to smoke inside. I was brought a bill by the by the music and entertainment industry. And as you could imagine, in Nashville, that's a lot of musicians and a lot of people who would have to work in the bars. And there's, again, not very many left. But if you think about it, all across the state and all across the country, our workers are protected from being exposed to harmful substances. But the one exception were the musicians, bartenders, and some of the people that worked in these over 21 bars where smoking was still permitted. And what this bill would do, it would remove these over 21 bars from allowing smoking inside enclosed spaces, just because of the harm that would occur to the health of the people that have to work in there that may not want to smoke. I'm hoping that this will be accepted pretty well, because even among smokers, and I do respect their rights to smoke, but they don't have the right to harm other people with their smoking. And I think they've become accustomed to stepping outside, to going elsewhere when they do have to have a smoke. So I'm hoping that this will go ahead and pass this year. We've had a lot of support, even from some of the more famous country artists. Mickey Gilley made a video for us encourage us to pass this. It's called Smoke Free Tennessee. But that's what that bill is about, is to try to protect these workers in the bars that still permit smoking.
Yeah, great. Senator Massey, I'm kind of switching around here, so stay with me, follow me. The governor talked about teacher salaries. Another shortage. Of course, we've got labor shortage everywhere. Teachers trying to get theirs. You're also looking at healthcare workers, especially those that work for state agencies. We had a situation here locally, a lot of concern about reimbursement for healthcare services. Tell me what you're looking at.
Well, absolutely. It seemed like, of course, when I first started visiting the legislature, I was running Sertoma Center. And even then we were, 30 years ago, we were talking about the pay of our direct support workers there in that field. And basically, a lot of these providers, whether it's mental health, whether it's our elderly, like our Choices Waiver, like at the Renaissance Tower, whether it's places like Sertoma Center, Children's Services, they're quasi-state government. They're doing the work for the state in a contracted basis, but they're independent nonprofits typically, and they struggle. They can't decide how much they're going to charge somebody. They're told how much they're going to be paid to provide these services, and they've got to figure out a way to make it work. And as the labor market has become tighter and tighter, it's just become more and more impossible to try to find workers. And as we all the delegations had met with the different entities this past fall, it just kept getting louder and louder about the workforce issue. So while I knew there was going to be some extra funding in the budget this year for some increases in wages and in the reimbursement rate, I felt like we needed to look at a long-term solution. There's just like our Choices Waiver, which is what's caused the problems at Renaissance Towers. The Renaissance Terrace, they had not had an increase in 12 years. And that's really unacceptable. I mean, we've got to do better, because these are our most vulnerable people throughout the state that these providers are trying to serve. So what I decided was to come up with a task force that would do a kind of a market wage study and look at what we're paying now, what comparable type industries are paying, both in Tennessee or in other states, what competing industries are paying, where somebody may be going to McDonald's and getting $15 an hour potentially. And that's with, not the responsibility that they have in caring for a vulnerable child or a vulnerable adult. So it's going to be a 2-year study. We got the dog there now, so we're good. But we've been waiting on him. But we need to get the data to the governor, to the speakers, to the chairs of the finance committee, so they can make educated, and to Commissioner of Finance, so they can make educated decisions going forward, and hopefully not go every year. So what I ultimately would like to see is if there is an increase in state salaries for state workers, that it may not be the exact same increase, but that there is some consideration to do some kind of increases for these workers too. But without the data, we can't do it. And so it's going to be a long haul to get it and get it all right. But I felt like this was a long-term solution instead of, having to just kind of pinch at it each year.
Sure. Makes very good strategic sense.
And hey, Amy, can I add just one more thing? Because I've been, when I first was elected, 3 days later, they called and told me they were closing Lakeshore. So one of the things I've done every year is to ask the department to show me how that money is staying in our area, in our region that Lakeshore is serving those people. While there's been increased mental illness, there's been, the increased challenges of transport and different things. They give me this report every year. And back in, I think it was fiscal year 13, there was 46,000 people served. Maybe that was the first year with the funding. This year there was almost 77,000 people were served with that $20 million direct services to folks. So while there's no system perfect and there's continued challenges in mental health, I have wanted to make sure that I'm keeping them accountable to keep those service dollars in the mental health arena in our communities. So I just wanted to add that because I just got the report here about a week ago.
Yeah, glad you did, because it's a concern of employers and a lot of folks. We are seeing those increases and seeing the impact of it. So Governor, I'm going to give everybody a chance to kind of say one word and address what we haven't addressed. Governor McNally, do you want to introduce us to your friend and kind of have your last word? Anything we didn't touch on that you want to talk to our audience about?
Well, this is Shadow.
Okay, hi, Shadow.
He's a rescue golden. We've had 4 rescues over the years, and they've been great dogs, great companions. But one thing I want to mention, in the years that I've served in the legislature, and I'm sure going way back even to Reconstruction, there's never been 2 chairmen from Knoxville, and we have 2 very powerful chairmen. Becky chairs the Transportation Committee. Rick chairs the State and Local Government Committee. And that's never happened in the history of Knoxville or the legislature. And I think it's a real credit to them that they're in those positions and they're handling those positions extremely well. And it's a great thing for Knoxville and a great thing for Tennessee. And I think that type of representation and strength, it used to be the power base in Tennessee was in West Tennessee. You had the Speaker of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, and the governor, many times from West Tennessee. But now the power base seems to have shifted east, and we have the chairman of finance, the chairman of health, Rick, chairman of state and local, Becky, chairman of transportation, Ken Yeager's the caucus chairman. So just about every one of the senators in East Tennessee are in a very powerful position. Shadow seems to like that too. But it's is really good for East Tennessee to have that real heavy influence on what happens in the legislature.
Yes, we are very fortunate and to have them and have them give so freely of their time. Although I'm afraid the governor might have set you all up for a lot of phone calls and email today. But Senator Briggs, do you have a final word? Anything we didn't touch on?
Yeah, I want to bring up what one of the things that my committee does, which is the Department of Corrections. And I know a lot of people don't care too much about the prisons, but we did, along with Josh Smith, arranged for several of the chamber members to go to the Morgan County State Penitentiary. I hope they were impressed, as I have been on my visits in the past, that the prisons just aren't some place that we're holding people that had trouble following the laws of society, but we're actually training people with very very firm skills, particularly in the trades. So when they walk out, our construction companies and many other industries, have a source of labor and part of the workforce. And another one of the programs that we're working on, because of the lack of commercial tractor trailer drivers in the trucking industry, is that we're having a program, and Senator Massey has visited, been very involved in this also, where our prisoners that are in prison who will be released can start the program and the process of getting their commercial driver's license. So even though prisons don't they're not really high on people's radar, they're another source of workforce that we can have, and it's also extremely important to prevent the recidivism. Texas put in some very progressive programs on this, and they've cut their corrections budget by over $1 billion.
Yeah, we did. We took some chamber members up there, and Josh Smith with Fourth Purpose Foundation continues to do that at Morgan County, where a correctional facility where a TCAT actually operates. And if anybody's interested in doing that trip, please reach out to me and I can make that connection with Josh, because it really is a great way to build that talent pipeline and reduce crime, reduce state spend, everything. It's just a win-win for everybody. Senator Massey, we do have the governor, but you are chair of the Knox County delegation. So I'm going to let you have the final word.
Well, it's always, let's say, always a joy. And I've got Bella joined me.
Okay.
So, anyway, but just several things. I mean, the big issue with the transportation is it's constant. We've been working with the infrastructure committee here at the chamber and looking at how we can be one voice, with our traffic just continues to grow. And so we're advocating for that. But also, as the state moves to electric vehicles, how we're going to change our funding structure, because about 40% of our road money comes from out-of-state people using our roads. And we got to make sure we continue to be able to capture that funds too. The airport structure funding has been kind of changing. We've got to make sure, so many people are coming and visit us in Tennessee. We got to make sure that we keep that sustainable. But also it's, coming from a social service background, my health background is important to look out for vulnerable people and how we can save lives on each thing we do. But the last thing, I guess, is, the state's in a great place. We have our challenges. We're going to continue to work on those. The best ideas come from the people in the community. So we encourage you. I don't sit and dream up bills. People that are involved in it day in and day out are the ones that bring things to me, even students. And but we are in better shape, I think, than any other state in the country. And so I'll take our position where we are, keep working off of our challenges and moving forward. And then the Knox County delegation, with the Lieutenant Governor and Senator Briggs and the 7 House members, we're the strongest urban delegation that there is. I mean, overall we're really cohesive, and we utilize each other's strengths, and we work together that way. So it is an honor to serve. It's an honor to serve with these people, and to serve the best county in the state. Actually, I think it's the best county in the country. But Loudon and Anderson are, right up there with us, though, Governor.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you all too for your accessibility as well as your leadership. Thank you to Integrity Laboratories and all our regional enhancement sponsors. The next Capital Connections, which will be in person, God willing, and the creek don't rise, on April 1st. And we have issued an invitation to our House members. We will follow that on May 6th when we will welcome Congressman Burchett. So pay attention, watch your email and inbox for details and registration. Of course, our door is always open to Senators Massey and Senator Briggs. If you'd like to come back and join us anytime, we'd love to have you. Everyone have a great day. Enjoy this beautiful weekend. Thank you.